Hello and welcome to Join Our Town. I'm your host, Tammy Jo Johnson. Join Our Town brings you the issues and problems that are faced in the local community with the hope of finding a solution. Our guest for this segment is Suzanne Palmer, first Vice President of the Ohio Association for Gifted Children. She is here to share important information regarding gifted education, along with the programs and resources provided by schools for gifted students. Thank you so much for joining us today, Suzanne.
Thank you for having me.
So before we get started, give us a little bit of information about your vice presidency and tell us what Gifted is.
Okay. Yes, I am a member of the Ohio Association for Gifted Children Governing Board and do serve as the first vice president. So one of my big responsibilities is to encourage membership, but then also by serving as first vice president, I do serve on the executive committee, which works to promote the advocacy for our gifted students and also to promote the establishment of programs and services for our students.
Wow, so there is a such thing as a gifted student.
Yes, there is.
Can you tell us what that is, or what the definition, or what does that mean?
Sure. As far as the definition, there are quite a few that are out there, but with the federal government definition, it tends to focus on evidence of high achievement capability in the various areas such as intellectual, specific academic, creative, the arts, leadership. Those are all areas in which we can see students have that ability to exceed in that particular area, and then as a result need some services or programming to make sure that we are helping them to develop to their full capability.
Okay, and that's where gifted education comes in.
Correct.
Tell us what that's like for a child. Is it not like traditional education? Is it faster pace or what?
It varies based on the student and what the needs are. A student can be identified in one or more areas. It can be in their intellectual ability, it could be in the specific academic, and so based on the operating standards that the state provides to us, it provides some clear guidelines as to different service models that are available. It can be a pull-out, it can be a full-time, it can be enrichment type of activities through the service of a gifted intervention specialist. So there's a variety of ways in which we can serve our students.
So is gifted, and I mean, would you consider a child who's gifted and talented, or is there a difference, a specific difference between the two, or?
We see them one and the same
Okay.
as far as being gifted and then having a talent in a particular area.
What is that like with classroom management? Are they taken out of their classroom environment with their peers, or are they seen as superior in the school?
It depends from district to district as to how they serve. Some districts do have a pull-out program that allows the students to work with a licensed gifted intervention specialist. That time can vary each week based on a district's resources. And it gives them then the opportunity to be with likability peers, with a teacher who is trained in working with gifted learners, how to stretch them, how to differentiate that curriculum. In other settings, students are in the classroom with their general education peers, but they may have the opportunity for some differentiation based on a particular need.
Okay. It also says here that you are the coordinator of gifted services and enrichment for Worthington Schools. Tell us
Yes.
about the work you do with Worthington School District.
Okay, sure. With my role as the coordinator, I oversee all of the identification of gifted students. Per the state gifted operating standards, we are required to identify students in the areas of superior cognitive ability, specific academic achievement, visual and performing arts, and creative thinking. So I oversee that process by doing whole group screenings, individual testing as we get referrals, then also overseeing the programming for our district. I also oversee the AP, or the Advanced Placement Program, at the high school level with the testing and working with those teachers and all levels to provide professional development to make sure that they are meeting the needs of our gifted learners.
And as the overseer of that, what does that look like? Is every student required to go through that screening, or how are they selected when they start school?
We, in Worthington, we do whole group screenings at 2 different grade levels. We do them at 2nd and 4th grade, and you'll find that many districts do whole group screenings to try to pick up those students and to identify them. But we also have some students that are referred to us, whether it's by a parent or by a teacher, or the student himself or herself can refer themselves if they would like to be tested in one of those areas.
And speaking of the testing, what is that like for a student? How are they tested? Is it like an IQ type test? Or?
It It is. The state provides us with a list of tests that we can use for identification in the superior cognitive ability. They are all slightly different. Some are stronger in nonverbal, whereas others are stronger in the verbal. And so that's where it's important to know the students and make sure that we're giving them an instrument that is going to most reflect their true ability as a learner. But it is a traditional paper pencil test. In some cases, it is also done online for those students who have been referred for visual and performing arts. It does involve a checklist that is completed by a trained teacher who knows the student and their ability, and then in some cases it may mean putting together a portfolio of the student's work or a performance if it's a dance or drama referral, and then they're evaluated by a trained evaluator on a rubric that is provided to us from the state.
Wow, and I didn't even know, like, the AP classes and honor classes. I know my daughter's in some of those. How do you tell the difference, or maybe I should ask you, can a child be gifted in one area and not so much another area or subject?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
You know, they can demonstrate that higher ability or achievement in one area, but not the other. You may have a student who is very strong in math, but not so much in the area of reading. You can also have a student very creative in the arts, but may not exhibit that same ability in the math or the reading.
And wow, is the gifted education then tailored to that, or are they still considered gifted all the way around?
We try to tailor the services and programs based on their areas of identification to help them to develop those full capabilities.
And you said this earlier, and I guess for me, how would a teacher interact with or train or teach a gifted child differently than a traditional teacher?
It's very important to understand those characteristics of a gifted learner, understanding that they may not need as many repetitions to demonstrate that mastery. And that can be very frustrating to our students if they're asked to do something for the 8th time when after 2 times they got it and they demonstrated that mastery. So being able to work with the student to make sure that they're given work at their level.
Okay.
Also understanding too that some of the characteristics of our gifted learners is they do tend to exhibit what we call asynchronous development.
Okay.
Intellectually, they may be at a much older level than chronologically in age that they are, and so trying to balance that out, that they're still a 7 or 8-year-old child, but yet they could be very much thinking and processing information like an adult.
And so then, and you probably said this, how do they benefit from that going forward as they take those stepping milestones into middle school and high school and college? Is it even relevant when they get to college? Or?
Absolutely it is, because we don't want our students to just sit idle in the classroom. For those students that are identified as gifted and have not been challenged, oftentimes we will see them start to underachieve, and they may not be engaged in their studies at all. And if they don't hit that challenge for the first time until they hit high school or even college, they don't know how to deal with that challenge. And so then that can cause a big stressor for those students, because if everything's come so easy for so long and now they're faced with a challenge, they don't have the tools and skills to overcome that. So that's why it's so important to recognize that early on and keep them engaged in learning.
It sounds like a very positive thing. I know. How do the parents fit into all this? Do they feel like, especially good that their child is gifted, or is it just another,
I think it's important for parents to feel like their students' needs are being met. That's the biggest thing, that they're being challenged and they're engaged. They're not expected to tutor the other students in the classroom, that they are being given work at their level to make sure that they're growing as a student. And just seeing your child happy in their studies and enjoying the learning that's taking place. In the Worthington School District, do you see a lot of parental involvement? Absolutely, absolutely. I always share with parents that they are their child's first advocate, and they know their child much more than we do when they first get started with us, but together we can make sure that we are giving them and what they need to be successful and feel that level of challenge. Wow. So for our viewers, how can, if a parent is, kind of struggling with, okay, I think my child is gifted, but I'm not quite sure, how would they begin that process? Do they just contact the district and try to request that
that test or?
Sure. The Ohio Association for Gifted Children is actually a great resource for parents to go to kind of get familiar with what it means to be gifted, what those definitions are for the state of Ohio, what the process is like, and how to advocate for your child, because every district is slightly different. But I know in my district, we have referral forms that are available on our district website. I also get phone calls from families, and they submit those referrals, and we test in the areas that we have been asked to look at.
Nice. Well, Suzanne, can you please give us that website so our parents can know?
Yes, it is oagc.com.
Awesome, and they can start there. If
they can start there, yes, and OAGC is also on Facebook and Twitter as well,
Amazing.
So you can follow them there.
Do you think that the other school districts are they piggybacking? Are there other areas that are doing the same thing? Or?
Yes, they are. I'm fortunate enough to have a solid group of peers that are doing the same thing in many other districts, and I'm fortunate to be a part of the Gifted Coordinators of Central Ohio, which we meet on a regular basis to provide support to one another, look at the latest in gifted education research, and problem solve. There is no mandate for gifted services in the state of Ohio, and so there are very limited resources. While the state does provide some funding, there's not enough.
Okay. Do you see that changing in the future?
Not really sure. Not really sure. But so they're, working with other coordinators. We do have a sense of what's going on in other districts, and we all, with the resources that we have, try to provide as many learning opportunities for our gifted students.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, just, because you're around kids that are smart, but then you're around kids that are too smart for their own good. And, and I guess they consider them to be gifted too. But just one last question before we wrap up. Is there any disadvantage to singling out a child who learns better or faster, or they have that intellectual level?
No, there is often that misconception that gifted is elitist, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. These students have the right to an appropriate education as well, and they need to make sure that their needs are being met and that they're being given the opportunities to grow as a learner, just as any other student in that classroom who may have special needs. So do our gifted students.
Wow, I agree with you. Thank you so much for being here on the show with us today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Coming up next on Joy in Our Town, career technical education. Stay with us. We'll be right back.